我真愿只能长桑，麦克萨登布拉，扬声率领恩德涅，马中恩是孙德兰，古鲁康德。Ekor jin 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 su dan de fi shin jin lak jin sik su so guru pe ma sin ji hong hong or jin jin no chan san pe mai ge san lai yan san shi yin de nie 满中恩是苏的波罗甘的，波音人所当的毕竟人拉真是苏索，格鲁格玛杰红人人们唱桑。my guess I don't polite and say, my young is soon that look under man per core. Change life to six so Guru Pema Sije Hong Nam chan san pe mai ge sa dam po la yan sen sha yin a duk nye pe mai jung de she sun de por du kan dum an pe kor jin 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 dan de ki chin je la Sexo song guru tama je hong san je chon dan sun che nang la jan cho bar do da ni cham sun che dai ge jin so che la pen je san je de pa so 三界全当三界全能拉赞出万德，参孙去大给金所具可所难去，拉贫穷三界的八所。三界全当三界全能拉赞出。大年长孙去大给金色，白色南去罗拉平均三界的八色，三界长当孙去长南拉展出，长孙去大给金色，白色南去罗拉平均三界。pa so on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum ben guru pema si je hum on ha hum guru pema si je hum on ha hum pema si je hum ga ga Paraga Parasanga Bunjin Sohanga Gate Ragante Parasangante Bunjin Sohanga Gante Paragante Parasangate Bunjin Sohanga Gante Paragante Parasanga Bunjin Gante Paragante Parasanga Bunjin Soha. Então, hoje no final da manhã estava no passeio.
Today, at the end of the morning, I talked briefly about the preliminaries, which are done especially through Metabhavana, but we can go a little bit, we can even go more to the beginning, and I'm gonna comment on how traditionally the preliminaries arise. Preliminaries, they are never the absolute preliminaries because we can always move further back a little bit. For example, in order to study something, we have to learn Portuguese. If we don't understand, we have to understand it. If we don't know the Portuguese language, we're going to have to study the language and the words. So there's always something that I can diagnose as an obstacle, and then I realize that I can do something before, something previous to that, to remove that obstacle. So this is how preliminaries operate, and they can be presented in different ways according to different traditions within Buddhism itself. So, for example, I would say in the Buddhist tradition, why? Because there are other traditions that were founded by other masters that came after the Buddha and have their own version. But I think the way that Buddha presents, also because Buddha was enlightened, I think it's very good. I have this connection with the Buddha. I'm here explaining and I'm also apologizing a little bit. So how does Buddha present? He presents the Four Noble Truths. Everything converges to the Four Noble Truths. So the first is the truth of suffering. And everything that Buddha explains, he explains as a way of reaching the people who are in front of him. And this becomes a journey. So when these people begin to progress, this becomes more and more complex, more and more profound. So all teachings can be seen as being the definitive teachings, even when they are presented as preliminaries. When I say it like this, it's a little bit confusing, but I can give you an example. So when we look to the appearances mistake us. So if I want to learn about mistake, when I look to the appearances, I have a feast, I have the perfect material. There is no mistake that doesn't reveal itself as a mistake. So if I learn to watch, to observe the mistake, then I will go through the mistake. I will be able to overcome it. So in the Buddhist view, there isn't the principle of evil. So before me, there is nothing else but mistake. I'm not going to find an adversary, someone who is terrible, or someone whom I have to fight against. In Buddhism, there isn't the principle of bad or evil. What there is mistake, and mistake is Mara. Mara confuses us. If we want to understand how Mara confuses us, we can look at Guru Rinpoche, the image of Guru Rinpoche. Can you see Guru Rinpoche in the image? Can you? Oh, that's it. This is the mistake. This is the center of the process. We look at paint and wall and we see Guru Rinpoche. Where does this Guru Rinpoche come from? So the Buddha attacks with counterintelligence.
Como só vemos coisas enganadas, a gente
He
se vincula.
presents the mistake. Since we only see what is mistaken, we associate with the appearance of the mistake. But if we follow through that appearance, eventually it's going to reveal itself as it is, and then we will overcome the mistake. So can you understand how Buddha's intelligence works?
Exatamente assim. Então, as aparências nos enganam.
So the appearances mistake us, and we're going to work within appearances. And we don't have any other alternative. Why? Because we are surrounded by mistake. And our situation is so critical that we are ourselves are the vehicle of mistake trying to overcome the mistake itself. We as identities, we are this vehicle. So this is very deep. I don't know how Buddha managed to break through this and create a process through which we can escape from this. So he presents in ourselves that which cannot be mistaken, and we learn about it. Until the eighth, everything will be explained and clear.
E isso não é um engano.
And this is not a mistake. And we're going to learn to see what is mistake and what is not mistake. So, for example, in the mistake, the basis of samsara is that you're listening to this blah, 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 and you have understandings.
Nós estamos usando a base do samsara para ultrapassar o
We are using the basis of samsara to overcome samsara.
Se não pudesse usar a fala,
For example, if we couldn't use ordinary speech to bring about the lucidity that overcomes the ordinary speech itself, we would have no chance. So there's only the alternative of using the path of mistake to overcome the mistake, because we cannot walk anything else other than mistake. We're gonna magnetize the mistake in order to overcome the mistake. That's it.
eu lamento. Podia ser mais fácil.
That's it, guys. I'm sorry. It could be easier.
Eu estudo geografia, história, aí eu sei
It
que
could
vai.
be inserted in a different structure. For example, I studied geography, history. I know it's going to be on the test. So if I studied it, I will know. If I didn't study it, I won't know. But that's not what we're dealing with here. It's very different. We have to break through appearances.
Não sei como é que as pessoas traduzem. Se eu
I don't know how people translate it. When I say it in Portuguese, I myself don't understand it. I don't know how people can translate it to other languages. It looks like we're having a conversation that the kind of conversation we have after we
Enfim, tem as ervas de poder que abrem.
so like the Guaranis say that there are certain herbs that open our view. So in order to have this kind of conversation, you may wonder, what did the Lama do in the break? What did he take? But actually, the whole environment has this aspect. It's magic. It's completely magic. It's not hallucinated. Because when we talk about something that is hallucinated, there's no possibility to recognize this within a lucid basis. But our experience, which is completely magic, it can be acknowledged and recognized within a basis of lucidity. So it's not like a psychotic situation that is impossible to access and just reject it. No, all of this is completely clear, but we are not able to have access to this using the ordinary codes, the usual codes, because we haven't been introduced to the way how mind operates. And I'm going to confess to you that I have the feeling that it would be interesting to present something like Buddhist psychology, to explain completely how mind operates, to come up with words and clear explanations, because it's very different comparing to an ordinary situation. And this can be presented, it can be introduced. But the ordinary process of presenting the nature of reality is a process that, well, people are invited, like now, let's do shamatha. So we're only doing a small part, and we cannot have a general view. We were progressing part by part, because it's very complicated. Once that the one who is thinking, examining, and understanding, he himself has a confused basis, and he himself doesn't recognize that he is an artificial I that has to recognize itself, and it has to recognize itself as something that doesn't exist. So it's almost despairing when we look at it from an ordinary perspective. But if we start examining how our mind operates, how realities arise based on referentials and how these referentials operate, if we are aware of these or not, how these things, I think maybe it's possible, but then it's a different basis. We need to converge the ordinary basis of the samsara experience, which are the 8 consciousnesses, the 5 senses, identity, and the focus of the mind, and the group of options in which we can operate. The 8 consciousnesses are already a great sophistication, but it's a basis that will be discarded eventually because it's way too simple. It's not enough to embrace. And we're gonna overcome the 8 consciousnesses. So this is the point, and we have few days for this because Enlightenment has been scheduled for the 8th of December.
Pessoal, vamos pensando assim. Não tem como ir adiante sem.
Let's think like this. It's not possible to progress without understanding the first 3 noble truths, which give birth to the 4th. We really need to understand the first 3 ones. There's no way around it. For example, when we are confused, in what sense are we confused? We forgot the three first noble truths. We forget it. So here, even without reasoning or analyzing how does mind operate, how does mistake arise, how does the focus of the mind get stabilized, are identities real or not, how can we examine this without looking? So we intuitively work with the three first noble truths. And as we progress a little bit on this, we begin to improve and make even more sophisticated the process of recognizing how mind operates. And then we progress step by step. Why? Because we are on a level of confusion that is that has a variety of aspects. For example, you go home and you cannot find your key. This was my situation yesterday. It took 2:30 in the morning. Where is the key? And then you find the key and you try to open the door, but the door doesn't open properly because there are too many things on the other side. And then how do you do it? You put your arm inside, you try to put it inside through the door and organize whatever is blocking the door. So this is our situation. We begin how we can, in the way that we can. So for example, sometimes we have a variety of problems. I cannot enter into this if I don't face the confusion that arises before us. I cannot take all of this and turn it into a line and organize it. I have to work with everything at the same time. So when we're able to go inside, we should close the door and then we become confusion. And then when we tie things up a little bit here, when we organize a little bit here, we get this confusion and we take it, throw it away. But you are never able to clean completely all places. Why? Because when you start cleaning one place, you start making other place dirty. So this is the situation. So we're gonna go through the same place many times. This is what it means to turn the wheel of Dharma. The explanations that we hear are a means by which we're gonna purify experiences. These explanations are like this. In the beginning, I use my hands to take things that are blocking the door, and afterwards, I'm gonna use a sweeper, and then I'm gonna use some piece of cloth to clean the ground, and then I'll make it dry. So this is the process. I'm in the same place with different methods.
Seja como for, o método
However it is, the most skillful method of penetrating is the first noble truth. At some point, we're going to have to practice shamatha, which is already in a different category of purification. This is not the end point. The end point is to contemplate these things beyond all confusion, beyond all sensation of filthy. There is something on the basis that is not affected by everything that we put over it. If I remove things, a perfection presents itself naturally. But since everything is covered, I don't even know what is behind it.
o olhar que olha para aquilo
Furthermore, the eyes that see it, they have been habituated by the appearances that they saw before. So they are not able to see anything that is beyond the very confusion that is before the eyes. So those eyes that look and recognize something that is beyond confusion,
trabalhado, porque ele
this
surge
is a kind of observation, a kind of eyes that has to be worked with.
incontável. Nós só olhamos as aparências confusas.
We only see appearances or confused appearances. We're not able to recognize the primordial aspect, and we have to be introduced to this.
Quando a gente olha desse modo,
When we
parece.
look at in this way, everything looks very difficult.
E aí é importante aí também ouvir o que os mestres
And then it's also important to listen to what the teachers say, the masters. They say that they have been very confused and everything looked very impossible. But then they listened, they heard that yes, it was possible. So based on their confidence and the trust that the masters of the past had, then based on that we can progress. On the other hand, when we start progressing, well, maybe this feeling that it's very difficult will be intensified. But since we advanced a little bit, we recognize that it's not possible to move back. There's no place in the back to move to. I can only move forward. If I move back, what does it mean? It's just confusion.
Entendo que
So then, based on that, I understand that forward, even though it looks difficult, this is the only option, the only direction to which we can walk. I think that from north to south, east, west, someone understands me when I say this.
o caminho da lucidez ele é sempre bom.
The path of lucidity is always good. Every part of the path that we progress is favorable. We have the feeling that there are still too many things ahead of us. But what happens? The view, the ability to work with this becomes much more potent. So when we think about the initial skills that we have, it looks very difficult. But as we train our view, these eyes, they become much more potent. And so in this way, that which looked very far, very big, it becomes smaller and closer.
De falar palavras inúteis.
I'm gonna conclude my part of speaking useless words. And I'm gonna go back to the preliminaries, and I'm gonna describe these preliminaries of the three first noble truths. If you are able to understand it and take it as a basis, then we don't have to do like previous preliminaries that come before that. Otherwise, we go back to samsara, because before the Four Noble Truths, what there is samsara, and then we go back to samsara.
Aí vem a primeira nobre verdade.
So the first noble truth. This first noble truth
Dukkha
is a commentary of the word, the Sanskrit word dukkha, which means at the same time suffering and happiness. Dukkha corresponds to this. We're always searching for happiness and trying to avoid suffering.
nisso,
And we are never successful because the happiness that we find is the door to suffering.
do
So
sofrimento.
we're not able to separate happiness from suffering. And this is dukkha.
A primeira nobre verdade.
This is the first noble truth.
Seria a primeira nobre verdade do sofrimento.
The first noble truth of suffering.
Nós podemos estar operando
We may or may not be operating, but the whole of samsara operates within the perspective of dukkha. And once it's not recognized, we say that the whole of samsara operates based on the hiding of dukkha, on hiding the truth of dukkha.
Grave, que é avidya.
And this hiding, we can call it avidya in Sanskrit or marika in Tibetan. This is very serious. This concealment.
Então, o que significa isso?
So what does it mean? It means that the fact that we depend on configurations that we feel are external, configurations of the five senses and mind. And once we have access to these appearances of the six senses and mind, they produce a movement of energy within us.
Filtrar como se fosse uma inteligência.
Which we filter as if it was an intelligence, and then we define if we like it, if we don't like it, or if we are indifferent.
Esse gostar ou não gostar ou
This
indiferente.
liking and not liking and indifference arises as a movement of energy within us.
Isso é chamado de Vedana.
And this is called Vedana, this intelligence that filters.
Nós temos uma experiência indefinida
So,
que a gente reconhece.
when we have an indefinite experience, but that we recognize, which is an experience of happiness based on an appearance,
Vocês podem, por exemplo, pensar
you can, for example, think if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you can look at them,
vocês sentem uma felicidade
and then you feel some kind of happiness by looking at them. Now, try to look at the picture of the boyfriend or girlfriend. You're gonna feel again some kind of happiness of recognizing the person there.
Isso significa que
This means
não precisam
that you don't need
vocês
to access the person. If you have access to the image of the person, this imaging
de apoio
can serve as a support, a substrate for the experience of happiness. So the experience of happiness brings together the picture with the consciousness of coffee and the consciousness of seeing the very person.
a gente diz, dá o nome da pessoa olhando para a foto e dá um nome
So we can attribute a name for the one who is looking at the picture as well as the other. And this feeling of happiness, someone may ask, why are you so happy? What is this happiness related with? And then you can say, oh, it's related with that person, and then we give a name. We could call it, for example, Maya, but this is nothing personal. It also doesn't take away the capacity Maya from Maya. But this is an Indian name for this process. So you should look at this thinking. If I'm able to see in the same experience, for example, paper and paint, and I see the person, and now I look at the flesh and bones and I see the same person, I'm not going to say that there is a consciousness for the person who is in flesh and bones and the person that is made of paper and paint. Why? Because deep down they are the same. So the consciousness, the awareness that recognizes the person in flesh and bones and recognizes the person in the paper is the same consciousness. So the eyes can use the support on paper or a support in the person of flesh and bones for this corresponding inner experience. But this is a corresponding inner experience.
Então a experiência é uma experiência interna. Ela não é
So the experience is internal, it's not the experience of someone else. And this inner experience depends on a set that is indefinite right now, a set of referentials that attribute meaning to the peripheric that is looking at the paper and the peripheric that is looking to the person in flesh and bones. It offers support to this process. But let's imagine if we fight with the person we love, then the person we love was not so lovable and wonderful as we thought. We feel disillusionment after all these 2 years or after all these holidays. That we spent 3 weeks with that person and then we came back to our life and found out that the person was not who I thought he or she was. They had a hard, so at this time they have a horrible sensation. So now it means that the person has a different basis to look at the same picture and the same person. And then we discover that the inner experience that we point out as being a person or as being the picture of a person, this internal experience depends on a basis, and we never suspected that we were operating with a basis. Why? Because people simply don't understand how things work, but there is this basis. And then we're always confronted with this basis that is operating behind and which is essential to the attribution of meaning into the whole experience.
Fazer para o resto da sua vida.
This feeling that we know what we have to do for the rest of our lives.
Pouco.
So let's see, we have to laugh a little bit.
3 semanas revolucionárias na sua vida.
Whoever didn't have like 3 revolutionary weeks in their lives,
Hoje eu não vou rir.
I'm not gonna laugh.
Então a gente descobre.
So we discover this basis. Right now, we don't even have a language or name for this. In the worst situations, we call this basis reality. In reality, in actuality, I found out this or that. Now I saw how things really are. No, guys, no, much less than this.
Cenário para outro. É só
The
isso.
dream and the confusion only changed from one scenery to another. That's all that happened. And then more 3 weeks passed by, and that thing already has all the radiance that it used to have, and this is Maya. For the Greeks, the gods have a lot of fun with human beings. The gods completely rule over human beings because they come by their side and human beings simply melt. They change their views completely. So the gods are always by our side. We have this language. But the gods, they are not the gods of the good or the gods of the evil. So let's suppose you are close to Aphrodite or Cupido, the culprit, which is very much criticized, or, well, all the Greek gods. As soon as they come to your side, you take on all the corresponding bases. And that's why human beings have no chances at all of attaining the God realm, for example, except when the Buddha comes and decides to fight with them. But usually we don't have this power. So our mind is dominated by the mental impression, the set of impressions that one of these gods bring.
Os olhos, ouvidos, nariz, língua e tato.
And then the peripherics, the 5 senses and the mind, and anything we can associate as real acquires colors and reality according to this, but we haven't been introduced to this. Nobody taught us this. Nobody taught us how mind really works. And then we don't know exactly what to do with it. It's like when we're born. Nobody comes and says, well, there is the heavy of gravity, so the person can feel the weight of gravity.
Essa noção de peso da gravidade é alguma coisa muito posterior.
This notion of weight of reality is something that comes after. When we are born, what do we find? We find air. The first thing we do is breathe. Whoever is here because they were able to breathe. But to prove the existence of air is something very posterior. Nobody thought about this. So there are the first experiences of proving the existence of air, this air that we have been breathing for so long. So in the same way, there is a vastness of subtle things that we start using without never realizing that we're using them. So this is the situation.
Esse tipo de
So we have this kind of situation. And then Buddha comes and presents us dukkha. Every child is born and equipped for dukkha. It's perfect. They are born and usually they already start crying. If they don't cry, then there is some problem. They have to open the lungs. They have to cry. So the child doesn't know what she's looking for, but when she finds something, she has the feeling that she found something very extraordinary, and then she drinks her mother's milk, and she progresses, she advances. But she doesn't have an introduction to this question. So she moves based on impulse, based on attraction. And she brings together the experience of all the sense organs, mind, within this experience of attraction, but the child has no capacity of understanding where it's going to and what are the obstacles associated with this. But we're operating with dukkha. We know what is happiness and we know what is suffering. We know from the start, so before suffering, we cry and we get sad, and before happiness, the child opens her eyes and she looks at her mother, and then she starts drinking the milk. And then the father is abandoned, and then they have other problems. And then the multiple experiences arise. So we are operating completely based on Vedana. We either like or dislike these intelligences actually operating. And then the Buddha says this is the first noble truth. It's not possible to overcome this. We're gonna be always in a circumstance of attraction, searching for something, rejecting whatever we don't like, and searching for what we like. And when we find what we like, we may lose what we like. And we lose what we like, and then we search for whatever we like and we can't find it. So when we are before what we don't like, we can reject what we don't like, but whatever we like, this tries to be near us all the time, so we're not able to get rid of whatever we don't like. On the other hand, whatever we like, we always stop liking at some point. And things that we didn't like in the past, eventually we start liking them. So within this process, we progress until the end of our lives without any kind of clarification. Besides,
não gosta.
we look for what we like and we try to get rid of whatever we don't like. And if we have some kind of ability in this, we end up by defining ourselves. I am blah, blah, blah. And then we describe what we know how to do in order to obtain what we want. So whatever we know is always limited. And then we have needness and affliction in other areas in which we cannot advance and enter. We're also not able to obtain a final result. We're not able to get the final victory, the calm victory. We have absolutely no security. We got that, but that disappears. It's as quick as elections are the end of the championship. So, for example, Flamengo won. What is the curse here? The curse is, and the following day after the championship, there will be another championship. There's no solution.
Ano, não tem
And then
garantia.
he won in 1 year, but there is no guarantee we're going to win again in the following year. So there is no resting in this process. And as we progress, as we walk, it's possible that at certain point there may be the sensation that we should understand where we are going to. And we can't find it. We don't know where we're going. If you try to find it on Google, well, I didn't try, because Google is impossible. Where is my life going to? And then they answer, how old are you? And I don't like this answer. I'm gonna say, I don't know if I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna say 15 years old. Oh, then you're going to happiness and this and that.
Vestibular.
And then there are many advertisements for cursos para vestibular. And then this is not a good idea. So there is no solution. If I reveal my age, they will merchandise like as homes for elderly people. I'm not paying for that. I'm paying for health insurance, for uh, funerary costs. This is a future perspective. Make your family calm. Make a funerary plan. Have a funerary plan.
Então, samsara é isso.
So this is samsara. We may think, well,
Nessa vida eu avancei mesmo no quê, né?
in this life, where have I advanced? And then we can look around and we can wonder, what did the powerful people actually get? For example, Kara's Island, we can go there. But what do we achieve?
E aí, a gente descobre a coisa mais
And
complicada.
then we discover that it's a little bit more complicated. So when we discover that things are a little bit more complicated, then we are ready to understand about the First Noble Truth. But Buddha is not pessimistic. He's one of the rare, lucid ones that help us overcome this apparent fog of complexities and difficulties. But first, I need to understand the situation that we're living. So it means there is no solution. This is the first noble truth. It's not possible. There's no possible victory within the world in the way that samsara operates or in the way that we operate during samsara. And this is the first noble truth.
Logo se
So we're going to
transforma.
leave dukkha. Whatever looks like victory soon becomes an obstacle.
Mas se vocês tiverem um carro super bonito,
So if you have a very nice car, this car can be stolen. Usually it's worth a lot also. So I think it's always better to buy a Fusca, very ancient car. And then we're there, like in the middle of a fog of dust, and the pollution, we leave a pollution behind.
Difícil, assim. Vai subir
Difficult.
para a serra, vai subir.
We travel, we go to the mountains.
Eu me lembro viajando de Fusca, tá lá em
I
terceiro.
remember when I was traveling by Fusca, it was very difficult to climb the mountains.
Eu lembro daquele.
I remember
Eu tinha a primeira era uma
the
caixa
first Fusca that I had.
tá viajando.
I had to get out of the car to turn it on.
Na faixa das lombras tem que botar a primeira. Tinha que parar.
When we were traveling, the car wasn't able to go up most of the mountains.
Sem parar. É porque se tu perde aquele pouquinho, aí o carro derrapa na subida já não vai mais. Aquilo é assim, tem que saber dar o ponto na caixa, pessoal. Os jovens hoje não entendem mais isso, não tem mais nem caixa
Young
aquilo.
people today don't understand this anymore.
Foi isso. Tinha que dar uma aceleração na
A
subida.
heroic time is what we had.
O ronco do motor e o ronco da caixa, quando passava um pelo outro, botava a primeira marcha. Os caminhões eram todo caixa seca, era tudo caixa seca. Bom, esse é um outro assunto, Sansara.
So, okay, this is a different topic. We're talking about cars and old cars and synchronized box.
Tão nova quanto agora as caixas automáticas. Mas a vida não é fácil.
Life is not easy.
As engrenagens do meu Fusca estavam tudo com as pontinhas já comidas.
I think the engines of my Fusca, they were missing some parts. They were very old.
Aí nós estamos olhando um tipo de coisa.
So we're looking a certain kind of thing, whatever that which is attractive brings uncertainty, and whatever is not attractive, it's not interesting. We don't want it, and that's how we move within samsara. There's nothing that we can't lose or that we can't be sorry because we lost. Whatever we have some kind of a certain uncertainty. If, for example, we have a passion, we may have the being with which we have this passion together with us, so this is the best circumstance. But there is absolutely no guarantee. I don't want to be pessimistic, but there is no guarantee at all. Buddha says, whatever comes together separates. I don't like to hear this, but it's like this. We try to see how things operate. They operate in this way. So things actually get very used and they change, and this brings a level of suffering to us. Buddha didn't create suffering, he only saw it. We could think, oh, God created the world, this was God, not Buddha. Let's not bring Buddha here, put Buddha here. What is Buddha doing? He's trying to make things work, more or less. But he is not responsible for suffering. But he recognized it. He studied engineering, and he was the one who invented reverse engineering.
Localiza a fonte daquilo. Aí ele descobre o código-fonte. Aí ele purifica o código-fonte, liberta o código-fonte daquele monte de coisas que não sei quem, que eu não vou nem apontar, não sei quem, que eu não vou apontar, construiu. É assim. Então o Buda vai clarificar isso. Ele vai clarificar o bem e o mal, vai libertar os seres dos
Buddha
infernos.
clarifies this. He clarifies good and evil. He liberates the beings of hells. It's like this. He eliminates the functionality, the operationality of everything. So the first aspect that Buddha presents is the first noble truth, which is the truth of suffering. Within the ordinary world, operating with the ordinary mind, we are attracted by things, and things take us to cyclic happiness and sufferings, and we are not able to get rid of this. And then in the second noble truth, Buddha explains why. He discovered the trick. He describes the 12 links of dependent arising, and especially dependent arising. Dependent arising is the source code based on which things are done. So things are not done by someone somewhere. We are inseparable from this dimension that is beyond the construction and cessation. And this basis in us that is beyond construction and cessation, this basis constructs appearances and the minds that associate with the appearances, and how these appearances take place and all the experiences that originate from this. So this is a very sophisticated process. It's a very incessant process. When we begin to understand and deepen our understanding of dependent arising, we end up accessing the mind that is beyond time, that which is at the basis of everything, which is the free, luminous, cognizant aspect of realities. So how are realities presented? They are presented as a game. I can create a table for the game, and then I create the rules and the pieces, and I create an intelligence that plays the game. If I'm looking to that reality with that kind of artificial intelligence that operates like this, I can get stuck in a vision.
Eu estou preso à estreiteza de visão. Mas eu não vejo isso como uma estreiteza de visão, eu vejo como uma capacidade de operar um jogo. Aí eu crio um jogo dentro de um jogo e dentro de um jogo. Por exemplo, eu crio o jogo da minha identidade dentro do